Well, another little bit of feedback from Twitter. Yay! But Xavier Barbosa was asking, how do I plot out a book? That's my stumbling block. And to preface all this, this is just the way I do things. Other writers might do things a different way, but this is just how I go about plotting out my books. So that way you don't get lost in, how shall we put this? Don't stay in whip mode, don't stay in world building mode, don't stay in character lore mode. You have to plot out the books. And to me, writer's block doesn't exist. One of the biggest things I use if I feel like, okay, where do I want the story to go next, besides having a bullet point outline of the overall basic main story, it's like, if you get stuck, just have the villains start poking something. So that way you can get like a short-term clash that can lead into the bigger whole main story. It's just one of those things where you'll discover what you want to do once you start writing more. Like, just keep writing. You can have a basic plot initially, and if you want to just go ground level, where it's just a simple, protagonist versus, say, a bank robber, or protagonist solving a murder mystery. If you just want to go very ground level and something straight up and to the point, you can start off with something like that. You don't have to have, to save the whole multiverse plot if you don't want to. It just depends on what you really want to do, and for the most part, I didn't really discover what I wanted to do with writing until I started writing, and kept writing, and kept writing. At one point with this little thread, Mr. Joshua comes in and says, start out with a loose ending or a theoretical end state you want to achieve, then start at the beginning and try to get there from scratch. Don't sweat the details yet. The later drafts can fill in the blanks, but having a bare bones path to the end can bring your plot into focus. Which is kind of similar to what I do, because with what I wanted to do, especially with starting out, I was like, all these franchises and everything else gave me all these disappointing endings where you thought all this foreshadowing was going to build up to something amazing, and then it just falls flat on its face. So I knew with my writing, that's what I wanted to focus on first. What was the end state for these characters that I was going to plop in? So then I go back and look at books where I found the ending satisfying, where I thought that the end state that those characters reached, ticked off all the themes and plots and all the other hooks that I found interesting. After doing that, I looked at even shows and other mediums to where it's like, okay, I thought that this encapsulated a pretty decent ending for a character, and it also kind of depends on what kind of character arc that character will have. Like, do you want to have an ending where it's like a bittersweet, cluster? Do you want to have a downer ending? Do you want to have an uplifting ending? Everybody knows where my bias lies. Yes, I want uplifted golden endings. I want good to win out, evil to get destroyed, and the protagonists get to go off into the sunset. But not a kind of sunset where it's just like, oh, all this terror was for nothing. It was a horrific victory or pyrrhic victory, however you want to say it. Just because half the time, me and the English language, we have a fun time. Me, I don't want to give my characters that kind of ending. Villains are going to be 6 feet under. Heroes are going to ride off in the sunset. Boom. But how to get there? I usually, when I'm outlining stuff, I'll do some simple bullet points, like main character 1. What is the primary virtue of this character? What's their primary handicap? And what is their primary goal? And you could just start off simple. You don't have to have like a very big complex roadmap. And then all you do is, along the way, you put in like little roadblocks. But you don't have to plot out every single roadblock, all at once. That can come with later drafts. The biggest thing with initially plotting an outline or a draft is to get the main strokes down. Like you have Sir Harold, who wants to become the greatest knight known to man, and his main virtue is fortitude. His main crutch is maybe envy, or it could be gluttony, that sort of thing. You just gotta put in something simple in there. And then, once you have that, you can do the antagonist, or the villain. Again, just I do simple bullet points, like villains to me don't have any virtues at all. So I put in their primary vice, and then I put in their primary goal. You can do it a different way. You can, if you want to, I guess, have the sympathy villain route, but me personally, that's not my cup of tea. Heck, and in the general scheme of things, I don't really look at a genre as the hard stop of what I can and can't put in something. It just means you have to make sure your book blurb will meet audience and writer expectations for whatever is going to happen. Because I find I like to blend all sorts of hijinks together. Especially that's the reason why my primary thing is probably going to be space fantasy. And a great mixture of that with, say, other trappings, like I'm working on my Sword and Planet series next. It is in rough outline mode. I do have some of the chapter titles and, one sentence or two here about what that chapter is going to be about. But I have most of the basic first two books outlined. I don't know how long I'll make that series. Maybe like 3 or 4 books. Because I find nowadays that 6 or less seems to be pretty good. Again, with Upload Protocol, from out the gate, I wanted to do this like big sprawling epic adventure, complete with superheroes and pew pew and space fantasy. So yeah, you don't always have to go what my route is. You can pick other routes. Because with Upload Protocol, I went more of the meta kind of concept outline, where it has a bunch of different layers. Like there's the initial layer of Eliza first discovering what's going on in her universe, and then it just keeps spiraling outward into bigger cosmic kind of arena, and that's fine. You can do that, but with the Sword and Planet setup, I'm going to be a lot more ground level in terms of where the plot's going. It might gain some momentum in a bigger cosmic area just because I happen to like that sort of thing. But overall, I'm going to try a different pathway with my Sword and Planet setup. So I would say get like 5 to 10 index cards. Start off with something very simple. Who the hero is, make some bullet points about that. Who the villain is, more bullet points about that. And then one of the cards you can have what is the end goal or the end state of those two characters. And then you can go back and add a few key moments, like tentpole moments that you want to get to, which I did have for Upload Protocol as well. But when you're doing the initial plotting, don't worry about every little small detail, because that way you don't get lost with like endless character lore or who does what. That way you can plug in other characters later that might help or hinder the hero or the villain along the way. And you can do that to the villains as well. Like you can help or hinder them depending on what it calls for in the situation. They're cat's paw for a reason. And then, just like with a more traditional like 3-act structure, near the end of the series, that's when you have the good guys go on the really big offensive, which is that's what I'm planning on Upload Protocol. You'll see skirmishes heat up a lot with book 7 Union there, but the overall riding down to rescue everybody from Helm's Deep moment, that's a lot of that stuff is going to be towards the end of season 3, and then it's gonna just not stop all the way through season 4. It's just gonna be like boom, 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 boom. But the reason why you want to just have a very basic plot outline is that way you can stick in tropes or tools that you want to use later that could take certain stories off into different directions. And if you keep it loose enough, the overall basic ending theme or state, you can plug in other things later. That, kind of like plug and play, you don't have to have every little detail planned out. I think a lot of people get caught up in the little details, but really my plotting style is bullet points and to have a rough roadmap, so that way you can plot around that roadmap and have the foreshadowing link into that end game format. For one example, in Uplift Protocol, I didn't really define what the Ouroboros stuff was until a bit later. Initially, a lot of the lore in Uplift Protocol was being filtered through Eliza just learning some things, but then realizing later on, like, even this filtered information isn't the true information. It was diluted on purpose to protect Eden and a few other places so that they could strike out later as the Arcane Order and, take back the multiverse and essentially rejuvenate Elysium later. And you can see I'm already building up to that even with the latest issue. Yes, Elysium is in a very bad state right now. And it's in a doubly cruel area because Unity thought it was being cheeky. And if you notice with the symbology, Unity always tries to copy its creator. And it does a poor job of it. So that's one way you can do the basic plotting. Like, when it comes down to everything in Uplift Protocol, it's essentially breaks down into Unity versus the highest. And there are various, pieces on the board as they go along trying to either destroy the multiverse or save it. I guess that's about it for me today. So everybody, you have a good day. And I might elaborate on this topic some more. But essentially, you can start off simple and grow from there.